Rose Cremation. Today we have on Christy. She's a rock star. If you haven't seen her before, she does a lot of things on social media. She does things a little bit differently in the funeral home, in the cremation business. She's got a very new age model of her funeral home, and I think there's a lot that we can learn and take from in some of our more traditional styles so we can kind of get up with the certain times that we have going and really progress. And I think Christy is one that is able to do that and show it. She's been very successful in what she's doing and for such a unique business model. And we would love to hear, Christy, what is Rose Cremation? What is it?
Well, thank you for having me on. I
Or
appreciate it. I love watching you all the time. Everything you guys are doing is incredible. It is. It
Thank
is mortuary
you.
marketing in itself. I'm always like, oh my gosh, what an idea. But yeah, we're a little different. We're a little different. So Rose Cremation, what is Rose? We started off as a traditional cremation service. It derived from a mortuary, and the marketing idea there was, okay, you're seeing all of these cremation services pop up. Let's just have a cremation service to, kind of see where that goes. Little did we know that the mortuary that it kind of derived from would not work out, in the long run, and Rose really would. So my mom started the mortuary and she started Rose. She has since taken a back seat and decided she's going to be a retiree and she's going to love life, and she should, right? And
Yeah, of course.
She's worked hard enough. My dad's worked hard enough. So we're like, you know what? We're going to take the reins. And my brother and I both decided, okay, we're coming on board and we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
We came from much different worlds. So I came from cosmetic management, and my brother was a graphic designer and he works for the LA Kings. So
Cool.
It is, yeah, it's a lot different. So we walk in, and of course, you're coming from completely different worlds. I think actually when I spoke with you and Connor, he had spoken about coming from a different world as well. So you have like a different set of eyes when you come into something.
Yeah, he came from Disney and he had a marketing advertising background. So getting him up to speed in the funeral industry was definitely a big thing that we dealt with like for a year, honestly. So he could understand all the terminology and the way the business works. And I'm sure you had to deal with a lot of that too. But at the same time, it gives you a whole different perspective that you're coming in with that we don't see as funeral directors. So it's nice to have those balance of like maybe your mom and dad with the kind of traditional style, and then you and your brother coming in with these unique special ideas. It's a good balance, and it's worked for us with mortuary marketing. So I see how that can work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think just like having that separate set of eyes, like you said, our parents, they were just like kind of like steeped in tradition, and they were like, this is how this goes. This is how it's been forever. And we were like, is that really working though? And it was, it was working. But I think as like millennials, it wasn't working for us. So
right. It's like, do you want to be in that position in 15 years? Things change, and then you're kind of stuck in that rut. So it's like, do we want to be ahead of the curve or do we want to fall behind? That's the question probably you were facing.
Exactly. And we were very blessed, where a lot of, funeral homeowners' children aren't blessed. And our parents were like, let's do it.
Not
do it.
always.
We're going to go. We're
Trust me.
The struggles, the fights.
I love you, Dad. I love you.
Like, hi. So, yeah, it was, so at first we had a slight bit of resistance, and then we're like, look, if we do something like this, it might be a little different. It might, go a little better for us than it is going. And we were a pretty decent volume at the time. I want to say we were probably doing, for a cremation service that was brand new, we were doing about 60 cases a year. So we come on board, and
I mean, for a beginning, that's huge.
Yeah, it's really good for a beginning. And, my mom and my dad had been in the industry. So, they knew what they were doing. They kind of had their business plan. So it was really easy for them to transition into that.
Right.
So when we came on board, we're like, 60, let's try for 100. So we were like, our goal was ultimately to say, let's now kind of double what we're doing.
Right.
So we were like, I believe this place needs a makeover, and I think that we need to look at this from a different operational standpoint. So as I said, I came from cosmetics management. So that means operations are everything you are trying to sell. Like, you
Yep.
at just one store. If you're, now you're talking about going to multiple stores for, a big beauty company, but one store,
Yeah.
you're looking at $21 million a year. Like that's just like bare
Right.
minimum. So I was like, how do we kind of incorporate how we run a store into how do we run a mortuary? So it was a lot of systems that were put into place that were not put into place previously that we had to do. But then it was also saying, okay, everybody that goes, so if you go to any local mortuary, and
Hmm.
unfortunately I'm from Los Angeles, so we are in a very saturated market, and not only are we in a very saturated market, we are in a very known market. So it's very easy to say someone's going to go to Rose Hills, or somebody is going to go to Forest Lawn or
Right.
Hollywood Forever. That's a very easy thing. And understandably so, that is, that they're marketing toward that. People want to be in those places, and
Yep.
they're beautiful places. They should want to be in those places,
Of
but that's
course.
not feasible for everybody. So we wanted
Hmm.
to give a sense of like modernism and say, okay, now this is approachable for anybody. So anybody can come in here and, just kind of plug and play. We can have the service that you want. We can customize what you want. And that's kind of what we started doing. So we
Yeah.
completely changed it. As you can see, we do not look like your traditional
No.
mortuary here. Yeah, so it's been a journey, but yeah, so we basically started off saying we are going to renovate everything. So we got rid of like that old like kind of cherry oak, and like, just like that.
Drapery.
Exactly, that
Yeah.
typical mortuary that you're used to seeing. We
Hmm.
were like, let's flip it and reverse it and let's start it over. So we basically brought in all of our elements. We wanted people to come in here, feel comfortable, and basically feel like it's not some stuffy place where, we're showing up in blazers and we're,
Yeah.
it's very like, oh, I'm so sorry, man. We wanted to talk about
Right.
their loved ones. We wanted to celebrate their loved ones, and we wanted to really just kind of get a feel for the person that we're celebrating here. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a crazy time.
Yeah, I believe it. It's and that's the way of the future. I say this all the time. It's all about the service, all about the family, making it personal to them, doing those things that it's going to set you apart to show our services are as that's what you're paying for. It's not the caskets or the urns or anything like that. It's the actual service, and then if you have a beautiful building behind it with a great management team and funeral directors, like that all is cohesive into being like this is why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that's why the wedding industry has been so successful and so huge that we haven't caught up yet, but we're getting there. It's making that personal touch and making it about their love and their connection. That's what we have to do, because you have to tug on those heartstrings and say, hey, this is about your loved one, this is their last farewell. This is something beautiful that we can do for them. And then once you go at it from that angle, it's much different than what you said, Christy. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's not going to do squat anymore. Like those cookie cutter, it's not the way. So I love what you're doing. Very unique, very special. What are some specific things that you're doing for services that would maybe apply to some of our funeral directors that we could use for our non-competing LA funeral homes? I'm
So
kidding with you.
it's a little different here. So every family that comes in sits in the chairs here. We basically have a questionnaire for them, and
Yep.
we want to find out about their loved one. We want to find out what were their favorite snacks. Did they
Yep.
have any favorite music? Did they have any favorite colors? Do you have any tchotchkes you can bring into us? All of that kind of
Yep.
stuff. So we basically plug in, we kind of plug in everything, and then we build out everything from scratch for our family. So our families come in here and they do absolutely nothing. And that was my whole thing with when we started saying, okay, we're going to change this over. We want to make it a little different.
Yeah.
I was so used to like your traditional funeral home where it's like, okay, the family brings in the food, the family brings in, the
Hmm.
photos, the family sets up the music, they do everything. And it kind of derived from a really bad experience I had. So when my
Oh.
grandmother died, she had a preneed. She had a preneed since like 1979.
Woo.
And yeah, I know. So we made a killing from Rose Hills on that pre-need,
No
but
kidding.
when
Yeah.
I had gone in to the arrangements to do everything with my dad, we were sitting there And we are like, okay, so like what's included? They're like, nothing. You get the room. That's it. Nothing's included. Basically, you get the time. There's a common area where everybody can kind of gather, but please know there's other families there. So at any given time,
Oh,
there are maybe about 4 funerals going on, and other families are also congregating in that area. So you have to monitor if anything's going on. So I'm already like, okay, fine, whatever. It's really
that's
weird. It's
odd.
really
Yeah,
weird.
that's
Yeah,
different.
and I was instantly just put off by that. But
Yep.
I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to cause a scene about
Right.
that just because we're already dealing with something and I don't want to make something harder for my dad. So I'm just like,
No.
okay, Christy, go with the flow. And that is very difficult for me because I am not a go with the flow kind of girl. So it's very true. So we end up getting everything put together. And yeah, it was just that though. We end up showing up and they don't have any tables for us to use. They don't have any easels for us to use. Luckily, my
Crazy.
mom had a funeral home. So
Right.
obviously we were like, okay, we can just bring everything. We're going to bring it all. We're going to do that. But that experience, and the thing about that was also there was no attendance for us. They were sitting in like a little pod. Everybody was sitting and we were like, if we needed something, we had to go up to them. They wouldn't get up. They were
No
upset that we were
checking
asking
in.
them.
Yeah.
And I was so off put by that. So when I came into this industry, every single time I have met with the family, and I did meet with the family after that point, it was just to basically give them the opposite of that experience. Because
Yeah.
I guess in my head, the logic is, okay, you're already grieving. You're already dealing with a lot.
Mhm.
You're making plans, you're closing out accounts, you're doing basically so much. The last thing you want to have to worry about is, oh my gosh, do I have to get those flowers taken care of? Do I have to get pictures printed out? Do I have to
Yep.
get snacks for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
So with our model, we said we're going to do it differently and we are going to include everything. So we are all inclusive in our packages.
Very
We
cool.
ask our families, email us out some photos, send us some favorite music. We have a collection of about 300 vinyl records. So we will take out,
Cool.
yeah, if you probably see this guy over here, if
Yeah.
we will take out the vinyl for the services. We have done Elvis
Awesome.
services, we've done Jordan services, we've done Yucatan services. So we are really big on customization just because
Mm-hmm.
it's basically the idea of getting away from that kind of like cookie cutter service, like
Yes.
that service that everybody else offers. We wanted to not offer. So yeah, we don't have, the only expectation we have of our families is bring us close, send us pictures, we will take care of the rest. But yeah, completely custom. Yeah, we
That
include food and everything, which I think that's also like,
no,
you
that's
some people
rare.
don't want. Yeah, it's really rare. Yeah,
It's
we do everything. If you check out our TikToks or our Yelp, everything, you can see everything is included. It's kind of crazy.
it is crazy and it sounds like a lot of work, but I feel like you're very good with systematizing these things. So it's like this is how we can do it so it's not overbearing on our workers. And then the family can see we are getting so much value out of this. Like that's what you want to do, and that's how you get people to be recurring business and to spread the word about your funeral home and just show them the way that this can be done in a different sort of way where it's the family gives you the input but they don't have to think about it. That's the difference. So like they're helping
Exactly.
you along to plan it, but you're the ones acting it out. And I love like those little aspects, those little touches are huge. The food is a big thing that I think every funeral home needs to do because we can make more money on that too. It doesn't make sense that we've gone 100 years or whatever it is with these traditional style funeral homes and we're not offering food or catering. Why
Yeah.
are we not doing that? That's just
Yeah.
extra revenue they're going to be bringing in anyway. Why not make it easier on the family and we can make money on it? It doesn't make sense to me why we haven't been doing that forever. So, and if you can make it the food that they like, all the better.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I know Amber was on your show a couple of weeks
Yeah,
ago, and she's always like the person that like I refer to when it comes to, food
the
and grief, all of
food.
that stuff.
Yeah.
She's incredible with that. But it's a very valid point. I think
Mm-hmm.
food, music, even their personal items, that is such a big connection that people have to their loved ones. So why
Yes.
wouldn't you include that? Why wouldn't you do that? So
Stories
we're
and
very big on
senses.
that.
Yep.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And like I said, it's already a difficult enough situation. You're already going through something that's very difficult. So you want to remember those things that make you happy too. Because like while
Yeah.
you're wrapped up in your grief, you also want to remember, oh my gosh, this song reminded me of my mom, or this, this little like moon pie reminded me of her, and so on
Right.
and so forth. So yeah, it's really important. And you're right. It's incredible that you don't see more of it. And I hope,
Yeah.
I hope that tide turns. I hope that it kind of becomes different and it's
Yeah.
not, what we're used to and what we're told we have to do, because really the world is changing, and as our industry should.
Right, right. I think it is. I very much do. And it's conversations like these that help kind of give everyone a little kickstart in that situation to say, hey, we can do this too. I love that the funeral industry has gotten so much closer, it seems, over recent years. And we all bounce ideas off each other and we're trying to help each other because we want our industry to change the reputation that went sour along the way. At some point,
Yeah.
a lot of people went sour. So I think all of us working together to try to do the opposite and say, hey, we are very compassionate, caring people that we want the best for you. We're trying to do things for you. That's the way. And I love that we're able to do that through these connections. And it's just we give each other motivation to do more. We give each other ideas to do more, and then you can incorporate your own style. Like I always said that when I started learning embalming, this is a different way, but I learned from a bunch of different people, and I made
Hmm.
my own path, and that's the way I like to do it. But I still love to learn and like incorporate new things. It's the same thing with running your funeral home or running your services. It's like you can pick and choose the pieces that you like, or for a service maybe where someone was a big Elvis fan or something, you're like, hey, I can do something. Look, listen, remember what Christy said, like on that podcast or on her post, whatever it is. You can have those new
Yeah.
ideas, and we can progress and like keep it going so our industry can flourish, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I love that about all of, like, not necessarily the new directors, but just this new generation coming in.
Yeah,
Everybody is so willing to bounce ideas off of each
yeah,
other. Everybody is so willing to give up their information. When
yep.
I first started, you'd encounter a lot of older people that were like, I don't want to talk to you. What are you doing? You're my competition.
Competition, and
And
they all like that's how it was with my dad and my uncles, and I think my
yeah,
grandfather as well. It's like those people are competition, like we don't. And that's how I was, like when I started in the funeral industry, being flat out honest, I was like everyone is competition. I was very standoffish in mortuary school, and I'm extremely outgoing, but I was like these people are future competition, so I'm not gonna like. And I was
yeah.
like completely and utterly wrong about that, and obviously I learned since then it's like you need to do the opposite. But it's funny how big of a swing it's taken in not that long of time.
I love that though.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, if we're like, how they say, oh, we're healing generational trauma. Maybe we are within the funeral industry.
You
Maybe we
never
are.
know.
But, like, it's such a big difference. And again, I could say all day that, my parents were like, no, we don't want to do this, or no, we don't want to do that. But no, even them, they're like, yeah, like the more info we can get, the more people that we can give information to, the
Yeah.
better. Because there are some things that even to this day, I'm like, is that right? And I am so lucky to have just such an abundance of resources, especially in Southern California, where everybody's like, yeah, well, I do it this way, so maybe you can do it this way, and so on and so forth. Like right
Yeah.
now, I'm literally getting text messages having people asking from other mortuaries, hey, what's going on? All of that stuff. But yeah,
So
I
cool.
love that we're kind of changing the culture, and that's what
Yep.
it is. It's a culture change, and we're
Yep.
doing that, and it's
Yep.
amazing.
That's so great. What did you so when you made the switch to come into the family business, quote unquote, what were you nervous about anything, and what were your thoughts about dealing with, not that you do too much with remains, or like what was your whole take, because you came from a very different background, same with your brother. So what was that like, and how were you able to separate, like saying I'm focusing on running this business and helping families as opposed to that behind the scene work that is very imperative as well?
Yeah, so my mom had really tried just to kind of like break me down for years and be like, you should come into the business, you should come into the business, you should do this, you should do this. And I was like, absolutely not, you are out of your mind.
Yeah.
I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, I'm going to be in cosmetics for the rest of my life, and it's going to be feasible, and I'm going to do this. And it turned out it was not feasible, and I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. So
Fair.
I had just had my son, and I was like, you know what? I have some downtime. And my mom was like, great, you should come to the funeral home.
Ah,
So the first thing I tell her was, I've told you a million times, I don't want to be around your services. I do not want to see anybody. I don't want to do this. I don't want to touch anything. Literally day 3, she's like, come on, we're going. You're going to go see an embalming. I was like, great. So,
uh,
um, it was so the when I first began, I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, I'm just here for your admin work. I'm here to get you up and organized. That's all I'm here to do.
yeah,
That changed pretty much immediately. Pretty much immediately, you see that there's a need for it. And even
right.
if you're a squeamish person, you will get over that so quickly
Yep.
once you're actually in it. There's like,
It's a
and
mindset.
at this point, I'm like, nothing shocks me. I can see anything. We can hop in. We can do all of the stuff. We deal with remains. We deal with basically every aspect of the business.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I wanted nothing to do with it. So I kind of had to, really get used to it and really like kind of acclimate myself. And it's a lot of relearning too.
Oh yeah.
I think people forget more often than not how much work goes in behind the scenes, even just like on a filing level, how much work goes into it, how much
yeah.
like how much effort it takes, the dreaded physicians, everything. It's just kind of, it's so much work. And here I am from the outside, and your parents are in it, but you're not asking about it because you want nothing to do with it. And I didn't realize how much work they had been doing for all of these years and how much it took out. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm always tired. I'm always exhausted. And my parents were always exhausted. They were always tired. And now I can see why. But, then you don't realize that. You don't see any of that. So
unless you're in it, right? Yep.
Until you're in it. So
that's why we all have that special connection, I think. Funeral directors know. And that's why we're like, hey, we can all flow in the same way because we realize the challenges that every day can hold.
Yeah, and it's really true. I feel like it's always ever changing. You never know what's going to be thrown at you, so you have to adapt so quickly in this industry. It's just I think funeral directors are very unique people because they are just probably the best group of people that can think on their feet. They can adapt. They can think on their feet. Like you throw something at them and tell them to tap dance, and they will tap dance.
You need to adjust at a second's notice nonstop. You have to be on your toes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's like with every aspect, whether that's like a filing, whether that's a decedent, whether that's a service, every single aspect. I feel like we always just have things thrown at us and we're like, oh my gosh. And you have to just act like cool. So we always use the analogy of you have to be a duck on water. So when a duck's on water, it's very serene, it's floating, it's doing its thing. But underneath it's like
you're doing
that thing. Yeah. So, we always are ducks on water in this industry. And, we never let our families know that. But after, when we walk back in the back, we're like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, are we okay? Like, we're checking on each other kind of a deal. And I've been very lucky, kind of in this transition I've had my best friend, Lindsay. She is our office manager. She handles everything in our office.
That's huge.
I have my brother and, my parents, while they do enjoy, they're enjoying their semi-retirement. My parents are literally a phone call away and they're always here. My dad was literally just here. And, they're always here. They're very much a part of it. We don't do anything without running anything by our little committee that we have. And I don't even think in the future that, even if they're like 80 years old and we're still doing this and, we're in our 60s, I don't see myself not including them just because they are they're such a part of it. They are such a big part of it still. Everybody. It's a family effort.
It is. And that's why it's such a beautiful thing what you're doing. And it shows us, like people like me and other family firms, that it can be done. You just gotta focus and use some determination. And maybe some funeral directors that are a little bit older might take a little bit more persuasion than your mom and dad, but it can be done. And you've shown it yourself. How big is your business grown from those about 60 calls that you were getting when you first were starting to now?
We do about 300 cases annually.
Let's go.
Just a little bit of growth.
That's awesome.
That first year when we said we wanted to do, double our cases, we got about 200 cases that first year. Wow. When my brother and I came on, we were like, okay. So we were like really cooking with fire. It has only grown. And I will say I can attribute a lot of that to the pandemic. I can attribute a lot of that to how weird we are. We are just a little odd. We're little oddballs, especially when
You
you
gotta
come to
stick
our general
out.
area. So we're pretty
Yep.
saturated. So there are to my north, there are two funeral homes within a block.
Oh wow.
Behind me, yeah, right behind me, there are to my west, there's going to be one block is a funeral home, one block's a funeral home. We are so saturated in our area.
Wow.
But it's weird. I know. I
That's
think
a
we're so
ton.
saturated, but we had to, like I said, we had to figure out what was going to make us different. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the realization for that came when I started seeing people my age sitting in a chair next to me. So
Yeah.
I started seeing a lot of millennials and a lot of their parents were passing away. And these are people that are my age.
Yep.
These are people that, you never think you're going to see that, and you're going to see, people who are your age's parents dying. And it happens, but so
Yeah.
frequently. So I noticed
And it'll only
that
be
they were
more,
not happy.
unfortunately, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's crazy. It's crazy. And then I think to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, does that mean you're getting older too?
We are, but don't tell anyone.
So I started seeing people our ages
Yeah.
in our arrangements rooms, and I just was like, you know what, we have to make this more friendly for us. And the fact of the
Mm,
matter is, we whether we have a full-blown schedule where we can't get away or whatever it may be, so there's so many factors that go into that. So we started doing everything digitally for the most part, especially with
nice.
the direct cremations. That's such a big thing.
For
we
sure.
we yeah, and especially when people are across across the country, whatever. And during COVID, nobody wanted to go out, nobody wanted to,
No.
so we really had to change that. And then also, like I said, changing how the services were, changing how everything is kind of set up, even
Yeah.
to how we meet with people. We wanted people to feel comfortable. So yeah, I think that all kind of factored into the growth of the business. I think everything factored into that. And Yelp has been incredible. Social media has been incredible. And
Yeah.
it's really allowed us to grow to the point now where we are a holding facility for other mortuaries. We do prep for other mortuaries.
Nice.
Yeah. And we rent our chapel to other mortuaries. If other mortuaries have to use our arrangements room, they're allowed to do that. And
Wow.
yeah, my whole thing with that is not everybody, and you're in a very similar situation. Not everybody has been, and for lack of better words, blessed to have,
Yeah.
have been born into something like this.
Yeah.
Not everybody has had that same opportunity, and I am
I feel
very
the same
conscious of
way.
that.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, so, and it shows, it totally shows, because you're out
Thank,
there to help as well. So that was
thank
my
you.
whole thing. Like, not everybody has that. Not everybody has that opportunity. So if we can
Right.
help even our competitors get a head start, we can do that. So it's also
Yep.
created for us, luckily, another stream of revenue for us
Yeah.
as well. So even when we're not busy, we're busy. So yeah, it's been a time growing the business, but yeah, we jumped rapidly. And I will say that
That
to
must have been
answer your
hard.
original question,
How did you
though, I'm sorry.
handle how did you handle that jump? Because that is drastic. So were you scrambling
I
to get employees? How did that work that first year when it went nuts?
So everybody had to instantly get certified. Everybody had to get certified in everything across the board. And that was one of the things we implemented, that
Yep.
we wanted everybody cross trained in everything. Because in
Hmm.
the event that something was popping off and a situation like this was happening,
Yeah.
we would be able to do it. So I would say, for the most part, myself and Lindsay handled pretty much all of the filing, all of the paperwork, all of that stuff.
Boy, oh boy.
It was a time. And my mom is she's like the salt of the earth woman, who she can sit with any family and be like the most comforting person you have ever met in
Yeah.
your life. And it's like the quality of hers that I wish I had, because
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, oh wow, that sucks. Like, she's like
Dang, I wish
the salt.
I'm happy I'm not in your shoes.
I'm like, oh no way, that happened. Jeez. But no, she's like salt of the earth. She is
Yeah.
amazing with families. And
My dad's the same exact way. He really is. Yeah, it's the same deal.
yeah,
He can meet with anyone and he just has that calming presence that you can feel like that connection to and you can be close with and you can rely on him. It's very much a talent and a skill that can is developed over a long time of doing this.
it really is. Like, I
Hmm.
feel like I'm sure your dad too, like just the kind of people that you just want to give a hug because they're going to comfort you like
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how my mom is. So we were like, hey, can you like take on arrangements for us? Can you do all of that stuff? So she is like the queen of all of that. We love that.
Nice.
So, everybody just kind of had to like jump in, and we always would say that we were a machine and everybody were little cogs in this machine, and everybody had to do their part to make sure that it was going. And it kind of came
Right.
back to like those like Ulta days of like being operational and like
Yep.
having to say, okay, you're stationed here, you're stationed here, you're doing this, you're doing that. But unfortunately, when you're at that volume, you have to do that. You have to do that. So now it's funny because high volume is nothing for us now. And we even so much as have a service where we will do filing and all of that stuff for mortuaries that can't keep up with their volume.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, it makes, and not everybody adapts to that. Not everybody does that. But when it did pick up, we had to just kind of hit the ground running. And there were
Yeah.
times where we have our cooler, it's like kind of like there's an alleyway right behind it. And there were times where I would walk out to that alley like almost in tears. And I am like just like almost crying to my brother, almost crying to
Right.
Lindsay, almost crying to my mom, because sometimes it felt so overwhelming and I didn't know how to handle that stress. And eventually
Yeah.
I think you just become immune to it. You just go with it.
Right.
You're like,
Yeah, I'm
it's
sure.
another day. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody is ever really ready for that kind of jump, especially with something that matters. Because, you can have a retail business and say, hey, we had a really great jump. And the worst that we're worrying about is, oh, do we have enough supplies to order? But this is
It's
literally
whole
life and
different.
death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole
So
different thing, and you
it was
cannot
a
make a
very,
single error ever. And it's
exactly.
stressful when your business goes up a little bit extra. You can be as prepared as you want. It's still going to be tough, but isn't that what we want end of the day anyway? So it's like, hey, like these are good problems to have, and we're helping more families, or business is doing better, and then you just adjust, like you just said, Christy. It's like, okay, now this is my baseline. I know we can handle this, and so you kind of move on. But at the beginning, any change is challenging.
Yeah,
Hmm.
especially, and especially when you have people coming in that don't do this, like they weren't people that did this. So
Yep.
it was literally a matter of having to hit the ground running. And I think becoming as good as we are at what we do now was just a necessity. We
Yeah.
had no other choice. And especially during that time, the world's kind of on fire, right? So like
Yeah.
there's that added stress to it. So
Right.
it made such a difference. And what we had thought was going to happen was, okay, we're getting this like really large influx now because of COVID and because of all of that stuff. We're like, it'll
It's
be
gonna
fine.
come
It's going
back
to stop.
down.
It never stopped.
No.
Before we started, I was telling you, I
Yeah.
am so tired. The summertime hasn't stopped. And I'm like thinking every single summer now, oh yeah, it's cool. We're going to have a break. Everybody goes on vacation in the summer. There's not been a vacation. There has not been a vacation.
No. You need some help. We need some funeral directors out there helping you. We need extra hands on deck for you, Christy.
We have our mob mentality here. We're like, you have to be like jumped in to come here. That's the thing.
I believe it. I believe it. I mean, that would be the only way from from the sound of it. Tell us a little bit about. So you focus pretty much on cremation services. So what percent are we looking at? What percent are you having memorials? What is that looking like?
So we do about 80% cremation. It's a
Right.
lot of cremating.
Yep.
So we do about 80% cremation. Then the other 20 would be services. I would say you're probably 15 body present services. And then, the other five, memorials and all of that stuff.
Right. Hmm.
I think we're very big on letting our families know, hey, we can help you with a memorial. And this is like my whole thing as well. We're going to make money regardless. Us as funeral directors, we are going to make money regardless. This is a very lucrative business. And
Hmm.
everybody, especially when you're in positions like ours,
Yep.
it is a very lucrative business. And while there are a lot to be paid, there are, there's a lot of money to be made.
There is.
Um,
Hmm.
so I think that the where we were kind of coming from was, we could do a memorial for you, or I can give you the tools to do a memorial, where you're saving now about $2,000. Because just because it's lucrative for us, that doesn't mean that somebody who had an unexpected death can afford that. That's just what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So we have been very conscious of making our price point, and I think this really does help us as well when it comes to services. When it comes to cremation, we almost underprice everything. We don't make as much as you would think on that. Not only does it drive our volume, because obviously you see this is the best deal, great, we're going to come in, but we also offer really great services too. So you're
Right.
always going to have more people coming in. But yeah, if we can get around that, as far as, like a memorial is concerned, telling a family, hey, look, I can tell you where I do my ordering from. I can tell you this is how I do this. This is where we go. This is what we do. This is how I
Wow.
set this up. And you guys can do this on your own, save a couple $1,000s, because I know this is unexpected and this might not be something that, you had anticipated. You can always do that. And honestly, most of the times they'll take us up on that, because they're more than happy to, say, we're going to throw a big party. Who knows their mom better than they know their mom?
Right.
All of that stuff. So we're always, unless there's a body present, we're always kind of willing to say, well, let's see how we can help you out in that regard. But yeah, as far as our business is concerned, we do mostly cremation. We do mostly cremation here and cremation services. But yeah, it's really, I think the reason that we are in the position we're in is because we try to price it for our families more than anything.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I figured you would be going a different route with that, so I'm interested in that. I think when you're that transparent with them, it builds trust. Is what it does. It's like, you could do this on your own. Like, you give them options, and they're like, okay, do I want to do all that? Do I want to do all that planning, or should I let professional people do it, to do this for a living, and that we've learned from other people or read online or whatever it was, that their recommendations, they go above and beyond for your families. So it's like one of those things maybe where it said, hey, we're giving you these opportunities, you can use our resources, or we can do it for you. I think it just like shows that you're very transparent, you're upfront with them, and it gives them that confidence in you if they go that way. But no, I think that's a good way about, especially with your volume. It seems like you need to go that way. But I mean, as long as you give a family some options, I think that's really the best thing you can do for them in all circumstances.
Yeah, and you really can gauge that. I think it's like on a case to case basis. You really can gauge it. Yeah. So if somebody is already coming saying, hey, look, I'm having a really difficult time with this. I want to do this, but I don't know how feasible that is. That's when you step in and say, okay, well, you can do this on your own. You're able to do this on your own. And sometimes people are like, I don't want to have to deal with anything. I want you to take everything. And in those cases, you're like, great, let's do this.
We'll take care of
let's move forward. But I think it's gauging it. And especially, even if you're in Los Angeles, that's not meaning that everybody's driving a Ferrari and everybody's, doing the thing.
No.
It's largely working class. So you also, I try to factor that in as much as possible, that we want to keep things as fair as possible for our families.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing. You're keeping it fair for them and helping out a lot of people at the same time. All right, my last question. I want to know, what was your favorite service that you ever put on, and why?
All right, I definitely have that one. So,
all right.
An Elvis service, of course. Mr. Elvis, he's here. He's always in our here. We've done multiple Elvis services. However, we had and now you might kind of have more insight to this. They wanted a traditional Irish wake. So
I have plenty of experience in that.
Exactly. So it was kind of a very odd situation from the get-go. So one of my really, really good friends, he works for an amazing removal company. And he calls me and he's like, hey, Christy, they're trying to change mortuaries. They're trying to change mortuaries. And I was like, what do you mean they're trying to change mortuaries? And he was like, the family is so upset with the mortuary. They don't want to go with them. Can I give them your information if they want to talk to you? I'm here at this call right now. And I was like, yeah, you can. I mean, it's like a little bit of a gray area, but if they have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer. But I don't want to take a case. So the lady calls me right away. She's like, I can't stand these people. I don't want to work with them. They're making me feel uneasy. How do I cancel this? I was like, you're going to have to call your mortuary first. I was like, you're going to have to cancel completely and call your mortuary beforehand. So they do that. End up calling me back. We go through everything and she tells me exactly what she wants. And I'm just like, okay. So she ends up, my friend, we end up dispatching him now, because I'm like, well, he's already in the area. We might as well just dispatch his company. So I call his company. We dispatch this out, get everything taken care of, and he's coming here and he's like, I'm getting a call as he's getting off of the freeway, and he's like, oh, hey, Christy, by the way, the family followed me. And I was like, what do you mean the family followed you? And he was like, yeah, the family followed me and they want to talk to you right now. I had no appointments that day, so I just have like this crazy bun in my hair and like no makeup, look like I'm trash can Christy. And I was like, why didn't you call me when you were on your way back from Sherman Oaks?
Oh
Like, why didn't
no.
you do this, sir? So the sister of the decedent comes in, and she comes in with her daughter. She walks in, and she's distraught. You are dealing
Yeah.
with something crazy. You just find your sister. She is distraught,
You're
and she
switching
comes
funeral
in and
homes. You're
sits.
doing all this stuff, right?
Exactly, exactly. So she sits down, and she was like, the first experience I had was such a bad experience. It felt so impersonal. I didn't feel safe with them taking my sister. And I
Ooh.
asked Juan, and Juan was there, and he was super, super compassionate. He was super caring. And I knew that I could trust what he was saying. He brought me right to you. I'm like, yes, I know. He didn't tell me that he was doing that. So, so we started talking. And she's like, yeah, I'm from Chicago. And I was like, oh,
There we
no way.
go.
I lived in Chicago for 6 years. And I was like, I lived off of Irving and Lakeshore Drive. And she stops, and she's like, she looks like she saw a ghost. And she was like, Irving and Lakeshore Drive. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah. She's like, I grew up in a building on Irving and Lakeshore Drive. And she
No
says, this
kidding.
really big building that's on that corner. And I now am looking like I saw a ghost. And I was like, my husband grew up in that building, and his
No
mom still
way.
lives in that building. His aunts still live in that building. His whole entire family lives in that building still.
Wow.
So she's
Do
like,
you want
I
to know
knew it. I knew
something?
that this was, yeah, she's like,
I
I knew this was the
I
place
live
to
on that
be.
street too.
No, dude, you're like,
I,
I live in that building.
I don't live in that building, but I live on Irving Park Road in Chicago too. Small world.
That's
That's
so funny.
that
See,
is crazy.
it's a big one. It's a really big one. So yeah, they end up so she sits in the arrangements room, and when you're in our arrangements room, I'm currently in here. As soon as you sit, she sees our record player here, and we always switch everything out. It's switched out daily. The record gets switched out
Oh,
daily multiple
cool.
times. I have a rule here that I want mod playing at all times, just because I think it's kind of like a diversion in a way
Right.
to make you stop thinking about what you're currently thinking about.
Yep.
So I constantly have her going on, and again, big Elvis fans here. We had an Elvis record playing, and she walks in, and she looks, and she sees the Elvis record playing. She sees the little Elvis over here, and she starts crying. And I'm like, oh shit, what's happening? Like, what is happening right now? Did I do something wrong? Like, should I turn this off? And she's like, my sister has that exact record player, the
No
exact make and model in
kidding.
her apartment. And she loves Elvis. She is obsessed with Elvis. So she was instantly like, this is the place I need to be. This is where I want to be.
Yep.
So we start going through it. She wants a full service. She wants a full traditional kind of, Irish wake.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really sure what that meant. I'm Mexican, so I'm used to like a Mexican service where it's like very pomp and circumstance. And it's like, we are doing a rosary, and you are going to be crying, and it is what it is. Like, that's what I'm used to my whole entire life.
Yeah.
So, I didn't realize what a celebration it would really become.
Right.
So we end up doing this full-blown Elvis service. She says, I want the whole entire chapel cleared, and I want tables in there. I want chairs in there. I want food in there. We're going to go to this Italian restaurant because Italian was her favorite food. So if you guys can get the food, if you can go get her favorite sandwiches, if you can do this. And we were like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. So we do that service. I end up meeting her at this really famous restaurant in downtown LA. It's they're called Philippe the Original. If you're ever in LA, please go. And I get all of her sister's items. So it's like her Elvis phone, her hats, her dog that passed away's items.
Aww.
We get, all kinds of stuff, and we set it up. Every single table is set up differently because it was each of her different items. Had the record player going, got her sister's records themselves, started playing that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and if you go on our TikTok, you can see video of this service. But the coolest thing about this service was there's a body present, right? You have a body present. There's somebody present. Everybody's eating. Everybody's enjoying themselves. Everybody's having such a good time that they almost forgot. And in that room during that service, my favorite part about the service was there was no tears during the service. There was family there. There was all of that stuff. There was no tears. All we heard for 4 hours, just erupting laughter. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was having a good time. Everybody was having a drink. Everybody was happy to see each other. And it was just such a nice change from what we traditionally do. And it was her. It was completely her. It was completely custom. It ended up coming out that they knew my husband's grandfather used to have an ice cream shop right across from Wrigley Field.
Huh?
And
no kidding.
Yeah. So they end up saying, I knew, because my husband's Greek, as you might be able to tell from the last name. They're
Yeah.
like, we knew a Greek family once. We knew this Greek family, and the man was the nicest man I had ever met in my life. He used to own an ice cream shop across from Wrigley Field. And immediately my husband shows a picture, and they knew my husband's grandfather, who my husband never met. He died before my husband was even born. So
Whoa. I wonder what the
I
name
so
of it was. Our original funeral home was blocks away from Wrigley.
yeah, it
And
was called Pete's Freeze.
Pete's Freeze. I'm going to write that down and ask my dad to see if he knows. I'm sure he's been many times when he was a kid. That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah. And in what universe would one of my friends be like, hey, I found this person, they're going to be following me, and all these synchronicities end up happening? But that is by far, it's the craziest mortuary story I have. And my favorite, the lady, she's salt of the earth. I love her. I will text her every once in a while. She's incredible. And yeah, my favorite part about that though was the connections that we ended up making
Yeah.
because of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it
That's
very, very cool
beautiful.
service.
That is beautiful. I mean, I love what you did and you made it about her. So cool. And I think we see those connections, those weird connections. I feel like maybe I just have my radar on for it, but I feel like I see them all the time where it's like these
Yeah.
weird symmetry that you wouldn't expect. And it's just like there's something bigger at play is what I like to think because it's just too weird sometimes and it feels like you had a bunch of that with her and that's such a cool experience.
Yeah, and it's true though. Like you say, sometimes I think there is something bigger at play. Like I can
Yeah.
be, the biggest skeptic of all time. Like, and I am. I'm like, I don't believe in tarot cards. I don't believe in astrology. I don't believe in any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But so I'm very skeptical. Like I'm very,
Yeah.
very skeptical. But then something like that happens, and I'm like,
Makes you
the
think.
universe is bigger than you are, Christy. Like remember that. Always
Yep.
remember that. And
Yep.
it's true though. It was wild.
So great. Everything you're doing is just awesome, and we appreciate you sharing what you're doing because I think we can put that into our day to day and make all of our businesses better. You can see the mentality that she has and the passion she has, and that hopefully will ignite a lot of our fire. And that's why we do this stuff is so that we can learn and get better and have some fun and listen to stories. So, Christy, thank you so much for being here to talking with us, and we wish you and your brother and your family nothing but the best. Hopefully, you get some more help on your hands, and just keep rocking what you're doing at Rose. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, and continue what you're doing. You guys are incredible, and I love watching you all the time.
I appreciate that.